When police found Roberto Calvi's body hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets were filled with bricks and $15,000 in cash. The press called it suicide. The Mafia called it a message. And the Vatican called it unfortunate. Welcome to Financial Timeline, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever what it seems. Calvi's death in 1982 wasn't just the end of a banker. It was the unmasking of one of the most secretive financial empires of the modern world. An empire built not on markets or armies, but on faith, sovereignty, and billions of untraceable dollars. To understand why God's banker died under a bridge, we have to go back nearly a century to the moment the Vatican became a financial superpower. In 1929, Pope Pius XI signed the Lateran Treaty with Benito Mussolini. The deal did three things. 1. Made Vatican City a sovereign country. 2. Gave the Church political independence. 3. Handed it 1.75 billion lira in cash and bonds. That payout became the seed capital of the Vatican's modern fortune. To manage it, the Church created a new institution, the Istituto per le Opere di Religione, the Vatican Bank. Its mission sounded wholly support to religious works. Its structure was divine in another way. No taxes, no audits, no national laws, no transparency. It was, effectively, the perfect offshore bank right in the center of Rome. By the 1960s, the Vatican Bank had become one of the most secretive financial institutions in the world, and secrecy attracts power. Enter Roberto Calvi, chairman of Banco Ambrosiano, a devout Catholic, brilliant, charming, and dangerously creative. Calvi understood the Vatican's sovereignty better than anyone. If he could link his bank to the Vatican, he could move money anywhere. No questions asked. And so he built an offshore empire. Shell companies in Panama holding firms in Luxembourg, accounts in Nassau. Fronts in South America. On paper, these companies were independent. In reality, they were controlled by Ambrosiano and guaranteed by the Vatican Bank. Here's the trick. Calvi issued massive loans to his own shell companies. The Vatican Bank co-signed the guarantees. But the companies weren't real. The loans weren't real. The money, very real. It disappeared into offshore havens, then resurfaced in political operations, intelligence operations, arms deals, mafia networks. Calvi wasn't running a bank. He was running a global financial machine, powered by the Vatican's immunity. During the Cold War, secrecy wasn't just valuable, it was weaponized. The Vatican and Western intelligence agencies shared one mission: stop communism at any cost. Money flowed through Calvi's offshore maze into solidarity. The Polish labor movement, right-wing Latin American regimes' covert arms networks, heroin routes controlled by the Sicilian Mafia morality, became a currency. The Vatican became a bank for geopolitics, and Calvi became its indispensable operator. Standing beside him was Archbishop Marcinkus, the 6-foot-tall Chicago priest known as the Gorilla. He controlled the Vatican Bank. He answered to no government, and he was untouchable. Together, they built a parallel financial world, a world without supervision. But no empire built on secrecy stays hidden forever. In 1978, Italian regulators found that Ambrosiano had transferred huge sums abroad without permission. Calvi was arrested and convicted. Yet, mysteriously, he was released, reinstated, returned to power. Meanwhile, new shell companies appeared. More Vatican guarantees surfaced. More billions vanished. Ambrosiano was no longer a bank. It was the backbone of a political criminal ecosystem. And the Vatican wasn't just a bystander. It was the silent partner. By the early 1980s, Ambrosiano's foreign losses exceeded its assets. $1.3 billion was missing. Calvi panicked. He wrote to Pope John Paul II, warning that if the system collapsed, it would expose the Vatican's secret financial operations. The Vatican did not respond. On June 17, 1982, Calvi fled Italy under a fake name. He carried documents that could tie the Vatican to the entire network. 10 days later, London Blackfriars Bridge, a rope, bricks in his pockets. The symbolism was chilling. Blackfriars, a nickname associated with the Dominican order, and with Propaganda du P2, a secret Masonic lodge of generals, intelligence officials, and financiers. Calvi was a member. P2 was a state within a state, and its banker was now dead. His secretary had already fallen from Ambrosiano's headquarters. 2 deaths in 2 days. The empire was collapsing. Auditors traced the missing billions across Panama, Luxembourg, Switzerland, the Bahamas, South America. Every trail circled back to the same place, the Vatican Bank. Documents showed Archbishop Marcinkus had signed letters guaranteeing hundreds of millions in loans. Italian prosecutors tried to indict him, but the Vatican invoked sovereignty. Marcinkus simply stayed inside Vatican City, untouchable behind holy walls, for 7 years. Outside, the investigation found links to Mafia accounts, drug cartels, political slush funds, Cold War weapons deals, death squads in Latin America. The Vatican denied everything. Witnesses began dying. The truth was dissolving. In 1984, the Vatican agreed to pay $250 million to Ambrosiano's creditors. Not an admission of guilt, a gesture of goodwill. A very expensive gesture. Marcinkus remained head of the Vatican Bank until 1989. Then retired quietly to Arizona, where he played golf until his death. Never charged, never questioned outside the Vatican walls. Meanwhile, forensic re-examinations proved what many suspected. Calvi didn't hang himself. He was murdered elsewhere, then staged on the bridge. 5 suspects, including Mafia members, were tried in 2003. All acquitted for lack of evidence. The perfect crime stayed perfect. The Ambrosiano collapse didn't mark the end of Vatican scandal, only the beginning. 1993. Vatican officials tied to a $500 million bribery ring. 2010. Suspicious cross-border transfers frozen 2012 to 2013. The Vatileaks scandal. Pope Benedict resigns. Watchdogs warn IOR is a potential hub for illicit funds. 2014-present. Repeated investigations, reforms, and recurring secrecy. Popes change. Rules change. The Vatican Bank remains a black box. It has no shareholders, no public reporting, no national oversight. Only the Pope controls it. It is, even today, a sovereign offshore bank. The Ambrosiano scandal wasn't just a Vatican story. It was a preview of the world we live in today. Shell companies, anonymous trusts, political money laundering, shadow banks, intelligence, financing, global tax havens. The architecture Calvi helped build, and the Vatican helped shield, is now standard practice for corporations, oligarchs, and governments worldwide. The Church didn't invent financial secrecy, but it perfected it early. Because power is built on one principle, the rules don't apply to those who claim a higher purpose. The Vatican has always been a moral authority. But Ambrosiano revealed something deeper. When an institution claims to serve God, the world hesitates to ask questions. And in that hesitation, empires grow. Faith requires belief. Without proof, finance stripped of numbers demands the same. That's why the Vatican Bank survived the scandal. Why its sovereignty remains intact. Why its walls never cracked. Because institutions built on moral authority cast the darkest financial shadows. Roberto Calvi's body may have hung under a bridge, but the system he operated didn't die with him. It evolved, digitized, globalized. And today, the Vatican Bank still moves billions in a world where belief is a currency and transparency is optional. The hidden banking scandal that shook the Vatican was never about theology. It was about leverage. And leverage, when wrapped in holiness, is the most powerful force in history. If this story gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.